Hi, and welcome back to the Global Holistic Wellness Podcast. This is the conversation continues. And today we have good news for you. You know how everybody's always telling you you have to do more to get more? Today we're going to tell you how to do less to get more. So stay tuned. So this is a subject that's been coming up in our sessions and in our personal life, which is connects to my New Year's resolution this year, which was I just want to simplify. I just want to downsize. I just want to have less commitments, and I just simple. If I, you know how you play that game, if you can pick one word to sum up what you're trying to bring in for the new year, what would it be? Mine was simplify. So it really got us thinking about this culture that we're in. We're here in the United States, but I know that it's like this in a lot of other countries too, if you're tuning in from around the planet, that would just keep thinking that the more we do, the more we'll have, and the more we'll have, the happier we'll be. But we're starting to find out, I think, that it's kind of working the opposite, right? And that we've gotten ourselves in this situation that we're working, working, working to have, and most people are burning out and stressed out and not getting that happiness that you think comes along with the money in the bank account and the tangible items. So, let's start talking about this. Like, conversation continues. How can we bring in less, and where do we start when we're looking at an overscheduled calendar and we're looking at all of the bills piling up? How can we even start to think about letting go or giving up something?
It's such a great topic. Um, we are experiencing, a time of quite a bit of chaos and burnout, and people seem to be working harder and actually obtaining more, but having less quality of life. And so, how do we create a balance there? As you were talking, Jay, it reminded me of this birthday card I had gotten years ago. And it was actually on the cover a picture of a monk. And
Yeah.
there were a couple of other monks, and they were very excited. And they had a birthday present that they were presenting, to the main monk. And when you opened the card, the main monk was so excited, and he had opened the gift, and the box was empty. And at the bottom, it said, just what I always wanted, nothing. And,
Yeah.
spiritual humor there, but, it was really profound because I think what we need to talk about first is, the nature of the beast, which is the wanting mind. And, as soon as we get what we want, we just, want the next thing. And if we could just take a moment to recognize the wanting mind and noticing that, the mind actually doesn't want anything. The mind just wants to want. And so when we can get a grip on that, I think we can begin to make a profound difference in our lives, and really start to recognize the difference between want and need, because it's this wanting mind that just keeps us seeking, that feeling, even though it's temporary. And then we buy more, and then we have more clutter, and then we may accumulate more bills, and
Yeah.
we think we need more to be happy, when actually that's what's kind of creating the issue and keeping us from actually that opportunity to feel peace and to feel happiness.
It's so funny because I love the book The Happiness Project, and they did a study about that idea that when I get A, when I get B, when I get C, then I will get happiness. And they fundamentally disproved it and proved that after 6 months of getting the goal, whether or not it's the new job, the amount of money in the bank account, landing the person, the person says yes to marriage, winning the lottery. They even studied people who won the lottery. that after 6 months, you're back to baseline. So, I like to phrase it as wherever you go, there you are. Like, no matter what's happening externally, you are who you are with the thoughts that you're going to be having. And so it does start, and you raise a really good point of like, it does start with addressing the wanting mind. And, I want to speak to too that just like, I think that in the modern era, we started down this track of more technology, more like online bill pay, more, trying to faster track the user experience, for example. And it's been my experience the past couple of years, I realized a lot of my stress comes from technology. Like it comes from things not working the way that they should, or being overbilled, or being double billed. Like I was just looking and auditing one of my bank accounts, and I realized Disney was billing us 3 times a month for the same service, and then trying to call someone on and get somebody on the line, and not to say it's isolated to that company, because I won't mention, I guess we'll have to blur that out for lawsuits and stuff. I don't want to talk about any companies, but okay, but let's just say there were three big named companies last week that I realized had billing issues, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to get somebody on the phone and trying to resolve it, and it just didn't get resolved. And I thought it was resolved, and my bill, hasn't been corrected. So it's things like this where it's like the technology was supposed to create the user experience of having to do less, but it has created an experience of feeling now more overwhelmed and more stressed out. And it's funny because I was going through this, and then I had a client come into session last week who just was like, I just exploded at a customer service representative today because I had been passed around for 2 hours trying to like fix it all. So I say this just so that I can normalize those of you who are listening, your experience that in the modern world, there are a lot more stressors, and the more you know, technology becomes integrated in our lives, it is a double-edged sword. There are going to be things that it does help with ease, but it also, there's more frustration now that we're dealing with a lot of like AI voices versus human people in customer service, for example. So, I mean, in AI, the way that AI is growing, I mean, it's supposed to make our lives easier, but we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
So thinking about, some of the things that we can do, what if we try like a human experiment this month? And what if we consider the less is more approach and notice where we can actually choose less? And I'm not just talking about the consumerism as far as the wanting mind in the material world. I'm even talking about our schedules. I noticed that we're so addicted to stimulation, like the mind is so addicted to stimulation, we can't allow ourselves downtime anymore. As soon as we have any space, it seems like we have to fill it, even if it's with social, opportunities. It doesn't have to just be work.
Yeah.
It's just that to do. There's a word that I had when I was a child, and I don't notice it anymore in this time and place. It's a word that used to drive my mother crazy. I used to say to her mom, "I'm so bored."
Mm,
Word.
yeah.
Do you all know what that word is? Yeah, and we don't have an opportunity to be bored anymore. So this month, that human experiment that I'm going to, invite you all to participate in is where can you uh, actually say no to something and give
Mm,
yourself some downtime? And maybe it's no to the TV. Maybe it's no to going out. Maybe it's no to buying something more. Why don't we just start thinking about where we can have a little bit more nothing, and start to see if we organically feel different. Because I know that at the end of the month, you will feel different. You'll start to have a feeling of peace that's not forced, that's not being searched for, because our natural state of being is actually peaceful. Okay, we just are filling every moment with something. So where in your schedule can you take a look and just doesn't have to be from one extreme to another. You don't have to go from being extremely busy to, downtime, the whole day. Where can you just take a couple of choices and give yourself some space to maybe daydream or to do a meditation or to, just sit in the garden, not even necessarily go for a walk, but just little areas here and there. Or maybe you say no to a few things and you don't even notice because your schedule is so full. That's where I think most of us are at. I think we could let things go and not even notice.
100%. And I've been thinking about my life and I as blocks of time and trying to create empty spaces in the timeline of every day. So just really finding spaces where there's silence and there's stillness. And really when you take that kind of visual to your entire life, like maybe you've heard the analogy, I'm sure, if you're listening, of the plate that's full, right? Or the window of tolerance, like when your window is totally full of things. So like when you think about your whole life, like we really don't have much empty space because the time that we think is empty is full because we're booking dinners with our friends, we're watching movies, we're talking on the phone. There's not a lot of time that we're in that kind of silence and stillness. And I'll link my do more nothing video to this one that I had posted a couple of years ago about, how important I feel like it is to try to do more nothing and how to try to change the narrative in our culture because it's like we're almost embarrassed when we share with somebody that we had a nothing day or like we took a nap. We have this like little joke in our family, about like some of the characters in our family will be like open about taking a nap and we find that so amazing. Like you can just announce that you're taking a nap and like go do that. That's amazing. Like how wonderful is that? And like how rare that is in our culture to celebrate that. I mean, there are other cultures that siesta every day. There are other cultures that are done working at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock for the day, like for real, and not taking those emails or those late night calls and not feeling so guilty about saying no to an event. Now, here's the thing, like I think it's an individual process, right? Because if you genuinely, if your tank gets full by being with friends, then that's going to be your kind of your nothing. But for us, I'm an introvert, so for me, it's like really finding that quiet and that downtime. But I think too, like it's also environmental. So since it's spring, and we'll probably hopefully do a spring cleaning kind of video maybe in the next couple of weeks because I do love talking about the importance of this. Take it out into your external world as well and look around for empty spaces that you can create in your home.
Yes.
Because that I feel like can be a reflection of how when we start to feel overstimulated, it can also be, think about it this way. If you have like piles of bills everywhere, how can you calm down in your space if everywhere you look is a to-do list, right? So it's like our clutter and the things that we have to do can sometimes pile up in this space, which can make our minds think about the things we have to do even when we're trying to relax. So that stillness, that meditation, that mindfulness that we teach is so important to help empty the space here. And then you can take it into the external world, looking at your calendar, looking at your to-do list, looking at your accounts. And that's something too that I've been working on is just eliminating accounts. Like, where am I spending money that I don't need to be spending money? Like, where are the bills that I can minimize because it does feel overwhelming every month to have all of these bills that you have to pay and all of these things that you have to check up on. And then what in my home can I get rid of? What clutter? What can I downsize? How can I downsize? Basically, I guess if I had to sum up what we're trying to say is how can you downsize your life? How can you switch from more, more, more to less, less, less? And the understanding of if I give myself permission to do less and to have less right now, then I will have the energy to have those moments where it feels like a sprint, but it doesn't always have to be a sprint.
All right, I have something fun to add to our human experiment. How about when you're going to purchase something, instead of, you know, go ahead and buy that, what if you took a look around your home and picked one item to give away? whether it's, something in your closet or an item in your home, maybe that you don't use or need anymore. So every time, maybe for the month, every time you're going to buy something, instead of buying something, you just say, no, not this month. And you give one thing away. And notice how that feels. It's really, like this mind trap that we think that we need actually more than we do. And as I started saying when we started this, is that, it's actually sabotaging our happiness. And if we can get a little bit more back to simple, so consider your schedule and where can you simplify a little bit? And where can you even simplify in food? Where can you simplify in conversation? Maybe it's even speaking a little less and listening more. It just could be a fun thing to consider, over the next few weeks and notice if it makes a difference in your stress level.
100%. And, a general rule I started following years ago, I think I might have came from the minimalists, was that if you want to buy something, you have to get rid of something. So something in, something out, you
Yeah.
have to. And that helps me so much because if I'm at the point in my wardrobe where I really do wear everything in my closet and it's kind of, in a nice spot. When I'm going to buy something, I'm like, but there's nothing I really want to give away right now, so I won't, just because I don't want it to feel overwhelming because your closet, your drawers, everything can feel, there is a too abundant. I do believe that. And it kind of comes down to, back in the day when I was like in high school and learning about Buddhism. And I'm like, well, of course the Buddha was able to achieve enlightenment. He had no stress. He gave up his job. He left his marriage, so can we please find a working mother who has found enlightenment that we can follow and that we can, kind of get advice from because that is essentially Buddhism, right? Is like that. And, this is full circle for our conversation because you started today talking about kind of alluding to the Buddhist concept of the wanting mind. It's like it comes full circle because it's like only with less and less even, I mean, they took it to in Eastern philosophy, kind of the extreme with even personal relationships because eliminating conflict, right? So it's like less words, less obligations, less stress, less conflict. It's really being intentional with your relationships, being intentional with your work, being intentional with your time. And I think that's what we're talking about too. And I mean, this would be a whole nother video too, but about like being intentional with your relationships too, because that, that can be a filler and that can also sometimes there are relationships that leave us feeling drained. So I think we have two topics that we can say to be continued on. One is that spring cleaning and kind of less is more in the space, and some more experiments on how to help you guys minimize the external world, and then maybe something about the self audit of relationships and how to know like what's filling your tank and what's draining it. So a lot of topics coming down the pipeline. I wish we had more time.
I want to just throw in one last thing is just so that, for all of you that are listening, be aware that in the beginning, when you're giving yourself less, because we're talking about feeling better, in the beginning, it's not necessarily going to feel better. Remember, the mind is addicted to stimulation. So, if you do give yourself that downtime and that space, you're going to feel in the beginning a little anxious and maybe you need to fill it. When we offer, the week-long retreats, we say there's a reason we have them, for 5 to 7 days. It's because the first couple of days, it's kind of a way to unwind and actually tap back into what's natural. Because right now, what we're feeling is natural, isn't. We're wound real tight and it's go, go, go. And that feels like where we're meant to be, but that's not sustainable. And that's why we experience burnout. So give yourself some time to observe maybe the anxious feeling or that feeling, oh, I'll be bored or whatever comes up for you. And just, if you can, just observe it, just sit with it. But notice how over time it will change and it'll bring you into a lovely place, to dwell, where you'll be in a place more of response rather than reaction. Everything's connected.
Totally. And it might be a little bit of self-awareness, right? Because we can get addicted to stimulation, and it's the same as addiction, right? When we're like taking things that we've become dependent on, there's going to be withdrawal. So what you're describing is withdrawal, withdrawal from the chaos, right? And you can be addicted to chaos. So that could be another good topic too, coming down the pipeline, addiction to chaos. And if you're interested in learning more about our retreats, please visit globalholisticwellness.com. We have Costa Rica on the books, the annual Costa Rica retreat that is open and live and ready to go, so you can book your space. And we also have a surprise retreat that is not exactly ready to be announced, but it will be coming. So you want to be checking our website. If you haven't already joined our newsletter, on our website, there's a little box you can join our newsletter, and that's where you'll get we don't overflow your inbox because we believe less is more. So, I mean, we're like basically monthly, you'll get an update of all of the happenings that are happening with us. So if that's something's interested to you, we encourage you to do that. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and email us at globalholisticcoaching@gmail.com, or if you're watching us on YouTube, you can always drop your question or suggestion down below. We love hearing from you. All of our topics come from you guys. So thank you for all of the engagement over the years.
Hope this was helpful. See you next week.